This video is on solving quadratic equations by factoring. Recall that a quadratic function is a function written in the form f of x equals ax squared plus bx plus c, where a is not equal to 0. When f of x is equal to 0, the graph of the function crosses the x-axis. To find these values of x, we need to solve the related quadratic equation, which is ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Notice that this is when f of x equals 0. There are several different ways to solve a quadratic equation. One of these is by factoring. So you'll recall that a quadratic expression factors into either a monomial and a binomial. For example, the quadratic x squared minus 3x factors into x times the quantity x minus 3. Or it can factor into two binomials. So for example, x squared plus 5x plus 4 factors into x plus 1 times x plus 4. Since the product of these two factors is 0, either one or both of the factors must be equal to 0. So since x squared plus 5x plus 4 equals 0 factors into x plus 1 times x plus 4 equals 0, then x plus 1 equals 0 and or x plus 4 equals 0. Solving each of these small equations gives us that x equals -1 and x equals -4, and those would be the solutions to the quadratic equation that we figured out by factoring. So let's take a look at a couple examples here. It says solve each quadratic equation by factoring. And for the first one, we have x squared minus 3x minus 10 equals 0. So I need to factor that. This one's going to factor into two binomials. And if you forget how to factor a quadratic expression, go back and rewatch some of those videos. So this is actually going to factor into x minus 5 times x plus 2. And since those two factors equal 0, I would set each one of those equal to 0. And then adding 5 to both sides gives me x equals 5. Subtracting 2 from each side gives me x equals -2. So the two solutions to that quadratic equation are x equals 5 and x equals -2. Let's take a look at our second example here. 2x squared plus 7x plus 6 equals 0. That's going to factor into 2x plus 3 times x plus 2. And again, if you forget, and that equals 0, again, if you forget how to factor a quadratic expression where a is greater than 1 or a is not equal to 1, go back and watch that video again. So then that means 2x plus 3 equals 0, and x plus 2 equals 0. And subtracting 3 on both sides and dividing by 2 gives me x equals -3 over 2. And subtracting 2 on each side gives me x equals -2. So here are a couple examples I'd like for you to try on your own. So stop the video and try these two problems in your math journal. Okay, let's take a look at how to solve these. So again, we have to solve each quadratic equation by factoring. And I have x squared plus 2x minus 8 equals 0. That's going to factor into the binomial factor x plus 4 times x minus 2 equals 0. And each one of those has to be set equal to 0. And then solving each of those equations, subtracting 4 is going to give me x equals -4. And adding 2 is going to give me x equals 2. So those are the two solutions to that quadratic equation. And our last practice example here is 3x squared plus 5x minus 2 equals 0. That's going to factor into 3x minus 1 times x plus 2. And that's equal to 0. So 3x minus 1 equals 0. And x plus 2 equals 0. And adding 1 to both sides and dividing by 3 gives me x equals 1/3 and x equals -2. So in this video, we saw how to solve a quadratic equation by factoring the quadratic equation and setting both of those two factors equal to 0. And if you forget how to factor, please go back and review the videos from that topic.